Welcome back. I'm Brent Meredith. The Tennessee General Assembly seemingly worked overtime to pass more discriminatory legislation directed at our community during the last session, and our trans family fell victim to the bulk of it. Here with me now to discuss some of his reactions to what has happened and the road ahead is Nashville District Attorney Glenn Funk. Welcome to the show, Glenn. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Great to be here, Brent. Thanks for inviting me.
Very much so. I appreciate it so much. And I know we've got several bills I wanted to mention tonight, and of course there's one in particular I know you're ready to comment on. But again, we had 5 bills that were passed in this last legislative session that sort of target our community. We had the anti-trans student athlete bill, the opting out of being taught LGBT sex ed, the bathroom bill 2.0, and then the trans youth hormone ban. But more importantly, for tonight's topic, I wanted to get your thoughts on the bathroom signage for business bill. I know that is something that your office would be up against here in Davidson County at least, and of course I want to get your thoughts on the ordinance or the legislation itself, and then maybe we'll talk about the reaction that was recently in the Tennessean as well. So sort of what was your initial take when you saw this sort of working its way through the legislative channels?
Well, it came through so quickly that my first notice that this was even going to be a law was after they'd already passed the law. The Tennessee's code says that the legislature is supposed to look to the district attorney's conference to get suggestions on how to improve public safety and enact appropriate laws to further enhance public safety. This did not go through the House Judiciary Committee. This was not something that was on the district attorney's conference radar until all of a sudden, boom, it happens. And in fact, as it went through the legislature, when we went back through it, when they were advancing it through their committees, they said there was not going to be any criminal sanction. The sponsor of the bill said there's no criminal sanction here. They then pass it without going through a committee that handles criminal laws. They pass it. They place it in the Tennessee code, not in the code, the section of the code that deals with criminal law, but in regulations for businesses and buildings. And so it gets passed, and then immediately they say, well, because it's a law that doesn't necessarily have any particular like civil sanction, then it has a criminal sanction. It's going to be misdemeanor. People can go to jail for 6 months. So that's the first time I got aware of that is when people started saying, well, this is a criminal law. Oh boy, well, let's look at it. And then when I read it, I realized what a terrible law this was, and how awful it would be if a district attorney actually exercised their prosecutorial discretion in a way that attempted to enforce that law, either against businesses or against individuals. It's I want people to know that Nashville is a welcoming place, that everybody is welcome in Nashville, that we all one of the best parts about Nashville, I think one of the secrets to our success is the fact that we value folks. We give every person that lives in this community dignity. We recognize everybody's humanity, and we don't go out of our way to cause somebody else a bad day.
Right. And I wanted to, if I could interrupt for a second, I thought it might be of value to kind of just sort of summarize for the folks watching tonight sort of what is in this. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read here from a little summary I have. It says, as amended, it's a bill to require entities that operate a building or facility, to your point, a building code, open to the general public that allow a member of either biological sex to use any public restroom post notice of the policy at the entrance of the restrooms, establish regulations for the required signage. So basically putting up a sign to let people know that somebody transgendered may or may not be using this bathroom. So again, to your point, it seems like an odd thing to even say, but how would that even be enforceable if it was something that had gone through the proper channels?
It's unclear how that would be enforceable. I imagine maybe a building codes inspector would say, hey, this business doesn't have signs up, almost like if there's some building that's not ADA compliant, right? Except for this is the reverse, because it's discriminatory instead of inclusive. And the other real problem that I have with it is what we're saying is that as a state, as a group, as a community, as a city, as this building owner, we're going to put something up that essentially is essentially just a sign in people's faces that tells people who are transgender or who are families of people who are transgender, you know what? You're not really part of this community. You know what? We don't like you. It tries to portray folks falsely as if they're sexual predators somehow. And that's not healthy for anybody, right? I haven't seen any actual instance of anybody committing a sexual assault in a bathroom that's transgender. If there was a sexual assault, we're going to prosecute it, whether no matter who the person is. But to actually try to demonize, dehumanize, vilify folks, it's just a classic situation where minority is being picked on by the government in a way that we've seen too many instances in our history of minorities being picked on, whether it's based on sexual orientation, whether it's based on race, whether it's based on gender. That's not who we are as a community. That is Nashville. It's really not who we are as a state or as a country. I think our laws should reflect our better angels. And as far as the district attorney, I have discretion, right? I dictate where the resources of our office go. We're dedicating our resources to prosecuting violent crime, rapes, murders, aggravated robberies, domestic violence. We care about these things because we want Nashville to be safe, right? To take some of the resources of this office and try to become somehow bathroom police, all right, and do it in a way that is that insulting and that hurtful to a small percentage of our population, that's just wrong. And that's not where we're going to put the resources of this office.
Well, and it was interesting to see in the article, and I wanted to have a chance for you to touch on this in the interview, where you had, sort of Rep. Reagan had come back and, said what they're going to say about, enforcement and whatnot. And to your counterpoint about the Tennessee Constitution places district attorneys within the judicial branch, and of course, our three branches are meant to check one another. So I was curious if you would comment further on sort of how you saw that sort of take on his reply that, how dare you not enforce these rules?
Right. We all learned in 7th grade civics class that we have three co-equal branches of government, right? And each branch, executive, legislative, judicial, is supposed to be a check on the excesses of any other. And further, when it comes to liberty, right, there's a lot of activities that a prosecutor cannot just charge somebody because they don't like what they're doing. The legislature has to first make it a crime. And so they're a check on a prosecutor's power. But similarly, a prosecutor in the use of a prosecutor's discretion is a check on the legislature's power, because they can say something is criminal, but unless somebody's going to actually try to prosecute, incarcerate, convict somebody for that behavior, then that's the appropriate way that those branches serve as a check and balance on each other.
Well, and that makes
it's basic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying that makes perfect sense to me as someone who paid attention in those civics classes, and I was appreciative of seeing that distinction made in the article. And I wish we had more time. It always seems to go by so quickly. I am going to have to cut us to break here, but listen, thank you so much again. We'd love to have you back at any time to talk about other issues that are relevant to Davidson County. And just thank you so much for the statement and the statement of support. I know that really rang very true with a lot of the folks in our community when we shared it on our side, and we've seen it other places. It was really nice to see in conjunction with Mayor Cooper's statement as well. So thank you so very much. But we do have to cut to break. So some good news when we return. There are new Pride events springing up all across Tennessee. More when we come back after the break.